well. So let's go ahead and hop on into it. And let's hope we can get back-to-back game 3, BO, because I feel like so far you and I have not been ultra fortunate yet on this do or die Sunday. So let's hope it's another 3-game series. In the bottom right side, we are looking at the main base of a Russian Terran player. It is a MilkiCow.
And his opponents in the upper left, in the red, the German Protoss player. It's GunGFuBanDa.
The Clam Slayer.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny. We talk about GunGFuBanDa, the Clem Slayer, this player that can do that. When I look at MilkiCow, I think we're going to either see him win really hard or lose really hard. He's one of those players that I think more than anything else really relies on momentum. You let him get a lead, he's really not going to give it up. But if he gets behind, I don't see him making comebacks all that often either.
No, that's true. The funny thing is that I think of him a little bit like the other Russian Terran player that we had in this tournament, Nikorakt, where he's like, okay, he's a pretty aggressive boy, but it's not totally fair because MilkiCow can absolutely play the late game. I think he has really good late game Terran army control, but it also comes down to confidence, right? Like doing that against Protosses that he's the favorite against, or guys that are just not quite on the level of GunGFu. The game is not that important, is one thing. Does Milky have the confidence in his late game ability to play a passive series here? Or is he going to do what we very often see from youngsters when it's for all the marbles? And this best of 3 is one that's for all the marbles. Do we go back to what we think is a bit simpler, and that is YOLO aggression and hope that the stars align and then we can just steamroll our opponent? We're about to find out. It is not an early expand, that's for sure. He's still going to drop a CC 2 minutes 40 seconds into the game, but it is after the starport. So we're going to definitely kick off with a bit of aggression. And I do always wonder when I see an opening like this, BO, are we going to build an armory as well or not? Because I kind of think if we want to go starport before CC and we really want to strike that early, don't we also want to do it with an armory?
Yeah, I would think so. And it's also interesting to see MilkiCow as this aggression starts. He's running a Widow Mine onto the other side of the map. Generally, you might want to do this against a Stargate opener, catch an Oracle in the middle of the map. But first of all, GunGFuBanDa scouted. The probe, they passed paths. But also, there's no Stargate, and MilkiCow should be aware of this. He's got the Reaper. I think the Reaper hasn't seen anything in the main base, so he's going to be looking for something, Roddy, that actually doesn't exist.
No, but it doesn't hurt, because what if the Stalker would chase the Reaper out a bit further than you would expect it? Then it runs into a Widow Mine, and losing a single Widow Mine, like the start here, that's a little bit reckless as he clicks it a bit too deep. So he's going to end up losing the Reaper very quickly. The medevac can still pick up that Widow Mine. The Robo has been warped in, but I think it's safe to say that the Observer will never be out the first time that this Widow Mine drop shows up. So now the key to victory for MilkiCow, and obviously this could still be a long game, don't get me wrong, but what you're looking for as a Terran here is to get at least one Widow Mine in the main, one Widow Mine in the natural, right? That double pro pull, that's what you're looking for, and of course ideally a Dream Connection on the Widow Mines, but that is something you can't really control. It's a lot of damage on the medevac, but here come the first Widow Mine and a couple of probes. Second Widow Mine gets burrowed here too. This is going to be annoying for GunGFu because there's one more Widow Mine that has not fired yet, and the other mine does not want to fire in a single probe. It's chaos over here, it's hectic. I think GunGFu is doing a good job. Don't lose that Widow Mine, Milk. No, why? I don't get it. Why would you do that?
Try to be too tricky. Try again. This is 2-2, right? This is you talk about it, Roddy. This is do or die Sunday. So players like MilkiCow, players like GunGFuBanDa, players like MilkiCow, I don't think he's ever made the playoffs in a ESL DreamHack event before. So when you are so close to making that happen, you feel pressure. You feel like you got to do everything you can to make yourself win. And it's actually it's common when you talk about regular sports. If you play golf, for example, you go and they're going to teach you how to swing a club, and they're going to say, don't swing as hard as you can. Don't swing at 80%. Keep within yourself, because you're going to be far more consistent. You're going to do far better than if you swing for the fences every time or try to do it absolutely perfect every time. And that's true in video games as well. That's true in StarCraft as well. You try to do every possible thing. Sometimes you over micro a little bit and then lose your medevac and lose a Widow Mine that probably shouldn't have gone down that quickly.
That's funny to me because I am not a golf guy, BO, but I did play virtual golf once in Korea, where you stand in a basement and then you just swing a ball to the wall. And I was like, I've never played golf, but it looks kind of easy. And I was swinging for the fences, and I think I hit my own leg. I hit the floor. It was an absolute disaster. Someone made a video, and I said, hey, that's the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. Do not share this with the internet. So I am somewhat familiar with that. It's just a bit of a shame. Like, sure, you can say GunGFu's robo is in the natural. So even if Milky leaves that Widow Mine behind, it's gonna fire one time and then the observer shows up and GunGFu can take it out. But the thing is, that still takes a while, right? GunGFu needs to pull probes. GunGFu needs to wait until he does enough damage to take out that Widow Mine. And that time that you're buying with that Widow Mine in the natural could allow the Widow Mines in the main base to go off cooldown. But by picking it up and then unfortunately even losing it in the medevac, yeah, you make it a lot easier for your opponent to not worry about the natural anymore, clean up the main base immediately. And I think GunGFu now in the end had a much better start than what he was supposed to have there. Because I was kind of feeling the build order. I was feeling the idea. I didn't even hate the way that he flew in the medevac around the Nexus when Blink isn't done yet. But losing it like that is painful, and that immediately puts a lot of emphasis on this move out right now. Does it have potential for MilkiCow? Absolutely. Does it need to be good? Oh, hell yes. Because if it is not good, I think he's gonna fall way too far behind in this game.
And of course, there's this Raven sitting behind in the mineral line. There's no interference matrix. That upgrade has not been researched. Hey, new change from the patch. So it's going to be good for anti-armor missiles, maybe some auto turrets, which are not nearly as strong as they used to be. But it's not going to have that utility to shut a Colossus down. So I guess for now, actually, Milky looking for damage instead. Only 3 probes will fall. And Roddy, Marines against a Colossus? I mean, you don't want to fight into those Stalkers like that, though, GunGFu. That hurts a little bit more. So Milky, he's going to continue to posture here. And as we get our reinforcements in, well, it's not going to join the pressure. Seems like he wants to start to multi-prong. So 2 medevacs on the right side getting ready for a drop. And on the left side, these tanks, they're going to continue to wedge their way in. And Roddy, the key thing here, there's no extended thermal lance. These Colossus really are going to struggle to connect.
Oh, and the Stalkers tried to catch the medevacs, by the way, but they didn't. So now you need to recall, but that's actually not a fight that the Stalkers are going to win. And this game is going to turn on its head, because GunGFu is going to struggle. He's pulling probes into Widow Mines. Very good split, at least there. The second Widow Mine shot, though, is going to hurt a whole lot more. That's a decent amount of workers falling. A Stalker going down as well. GunGFu did clean up the tanks at the third during this. But now MilkiCow has some of that momentum that I would say that he's almost known for. This is one of these young Terran kids that once they feel that they got the Protoss out of position once, twice, the recall is on cooldown, a battery has died, probes have died, this will not stop for a long time. I don't know if you can drop Marines on top of a Colossus, but the Mad Lad is actually going to go for it. If he kills this Colossus, that would be an absolutely amazing way to wrap up a Colossus kill. He gets it. What do we do now? Do we stim deep into the main base, or do we pick up and get out of here?
I think the army's just a little bit too wounded to really try to get more, but he's doing a good job of separating the Zealots from the rest of that army, which means he actually is able to get a little bit more out of it. Now picks up, runs away. Meanwhile,
third base.
A drop on the left side as well. This is what we talked about going into the game. You give MilkiCow an inch, he's going to try to take a mile. And in this game, Roddy, he hasn't taken a mile. He's taken a parsec. He's taken a light year. He's going to knock the third base down. 12 probes die. And by the way, into the main base, that drop tries, doesn't really succeed. But this damage from MilkiCow right now is enough to knock GunGFuBanDa out of the game. GunGFu, he can handle Clem's aggression, but apparently MilkiCow's, that's a little bit too much.
This was perhaps one of these classic scenarios where sometimes by playing it a bit too safe and trying to be a bit too cautious, it actually really costed GunGFu. Because that army with the Marines and the 2 tanks, was it scary and annoying? Yes. But could GunGFu have just walked into that and fight? Oh, absolutely. He had Blink, he had Charge, he has a Colossus with or without thermal lens. He could have taken that fight. And an even trade is a good trade if you're up a base and you're up 14 workers. But by kind of trying to get the best possible fight ever and waiting and waiting and waiting, he gave enough time for Medevac 3 and 4 to show up. Then he tried to catch that in the center of the map, barely missed it, had to go for the recall. And at that point, it's that good old snowball effect where if one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. A proper domino case there. And GunGFu went from 0 to 0 real quick in that game. And yeah, what an amazing feeling that has to be for MilkiCow.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny. You talk about going from 0 to 0. We're not in North America yet, but my favorite part about casting North American qualifiers in particular is that there is a Terran player who's solid. He's not top Terran, but he's a solid Terran who goes by 0. So then we get to make all of the 0 to hero jokes every single time, especially if he runs into hero sometime. But I mean, it's neither here nor there. And you're right, GunGFu, again, just getting a little bit discombobulated. It's kind of actually like the Hearthstone series in game 2, or I think it was game 2 against Young Yakov, where everything's going great. You're playing defensively, you're doing fine, and then the multi-prong hits, and you lose in the main, then you lose the natural, you lose the third, and in that previous game, it was the 4th base, and all of a sudden, you just don't know where you need to not even micro, you don't even know where you need to look. Just haymakers coming in from every single side. But the good thing about that is, well, that happens sometimes, but hopefully it's going to be pretty, somewhat manageable to recover from, and the dreams of a 3-game series are still available. But to do that, GunGFu has to win game 2.
Let's go ahead and see if we can make that happen over here on Hecate. In the bottom left side, the experienced German Protoss down 0-1, one map away from being eliminated from the Europe ESL Regionals. This is GunGFuBanDa.
And of course, in the upper right, in the blue, up a game, just turning it on all of a sudden. He's from Russia. It's MilkiCow.
Gotta be such a big confidence booster for this kid, where you go for your opening, and you know, those openings, wouldn't say it's all hell or glory, but either it goes really well or it goes so, or it's a disaster. And this was a bit between, I wouldn't say a disaster, because obviously we got some damage done, there was a bit of lost mining time, but I definitely don't think it was what MilkiCow was hoping for, and especially picking up that Widow Mine in the natural, then losing it in mid-air, so it can't even unload anymore. That's painful. That's where you start shaking your head, and you're like, oh no, that's a bad start. That's a bad start. I don't want this. And to then turn it around so quickly, flip the script on its head, and obviously pick GunGFu apart the way he did is amazing. He got a bit of help there. GunGFu, I think, showed too much respect to just a couple of Marines and a tank, because that wasn't the all-out setup that Terran players can go for. And then he saw that double drop with an observer in the center of the map, and he's like, oh, let me just getting the SCV kill here, by the way, is big. So good start for GunGFu. Another, I think at least a decent beginning of the game, but he knows that he's going to need a whole lot more than that. But yeah, trying to catch the 2 medevacs with the Stalkers, technically a great idea, except for when you're just a little bit too late. So then the drop does make it into your main base, everything can unload, and if you recall Stalkers and they've already blinked, even if it's only 2 Marauders, BO, 2 Marauders with Stim, couple Widow Mines, couple Marines, 2 medevac is so hard to deal with if it's Stalker only.
Yeah, no, it really is, and especially with those medevacs on top of it as well. But MilkiCow in this game number 2, game 1, it didn't work out. He went the Widow Mine, he went the drop, added the armory. You mentioned it. It really did not find the value he was looking for. But he's going to try to do the same thing in game number 2 this time. Should lose the Reaper a little bit quicker, so a little bit less presence map control on the map. Tries to... Oh, okay. He actually buys the time. This Reaper should be able to get out right now. Nice use of the KDA charge. And of course, behind this one, Probes scouting as much as he can. Widow Mine on the high ground. But Roddy, I think it's a little interesting to see MilkiCow go for this type of build in game number 2. As we saw previously, I think it was in Asia, just really big evidence of it. Hecate is a big map. Running things across the map, it takes a while. It's hard to pressure. So if MilkiCow is again going for this armory Widow Mine drop, which is kind of building into, it's just going to hit a little bit later this time. It's not going to be quite as theoretically effective. But I guess this is just how MilkiCow wants to play.
Loses the Reaper again, by the way. A bit different this time around, not walking up a ramp, but still a bit earlier, because I think every unit that can keep your opponent busy early on is so important. And yes, you're right, but maybe Milky looks at that previous game and be like, huh, whenever I do this build, most of the time I have better starts. This time around, it didn't go all that well and I still won. So why not do it again, right? And hope for one of these scenarios where you do have a better start. I don't hate the thinking behind it, because there isn't like 110% blind counter against it. In the end of the day, the only real counter on the side of GunGFu is execution. I do feel that his robo is a tiny bit quicker than in the previous game, but just because it's a little bit quicker does still not mean it's going to be quick enough, and he's still going to have to defend incredibly well. Last game we didn't see the devastating Widow Mine shots. Let's see how it goes down this time.
And big deal this time as well. There was no vision. GunGFuBanDa didn't see this happening at all until it arrives. 2 workers go down. Now Marines Widow Mine into the main base here. Lots of mining time lost already. Sarkis are going to warp in, so these 2 Marines aren't going to do all that much, but they're going to get another probe. And now, I mean, the sacrifice is eventually going to happen here. So 5 total probes fall. Marines are going to get a 6th. But again, MilkiCow maybe overcommits a little bit, loses the medevac. Although again, Roddy, this is a little bit better. Observer's going to be done very quickly. I think one of these Widow Mines might still trigger. It's going to try to go off. Retargets, gets 3 more, 9 in total. And in the main base, this should get cleaned up here, but MilkiCow finally gets that second shot he wanted.
Oh man, that was so close with that first Widow Mine, by the way, because imagine if that fires and every single Protoss player has also lost not just probes to the second shot of the Widow Mine, but then also your observer, and that's when you just break your keyboard in half and you're like, oh my god, are you kidding me? Because then obviously all of them will fire again. That did not happen, but yeah, that bit of difference, right? That now just making it go on a little bit longer in the main base made the difference between one Widow Mine firing one more time, a lot more lost mining time. I really think this was a good start. GunGFu knows it was a good start, and that's why he feels he needs to make magic happen on the other side of the map. All the SCVs are on hold position. Milky does not try to rebuild his bunker, so the bunker and the tank died just against a couple of tanks, and if I was going for, I would probably go for that tank as well. Obviously now it looks a lot more promising for GunGFu than it did 30 seconds ago.
Oh, look at that. He's going to try to snipe the observer. I don't know how much this is going to... Actually, it's going to matter a lot, blinking into the main base. But that bunker should have lived, Roddy. Yeah, losing the tank, I don't know how easy... It probably would not have been all that easy to save, but the bunker should have gone up. And remember, the downside of this build coming out of MilkiCow, your stim is very delayed because you commit so much gas to other things early on. The Raven's going to fall for minimal gain. And now GunGFuBanDa is looking for all the damage that he took on the other side. SCVs have to get pulled off the line. Raven falls. And MilkiCow will eventually get on up to 3 tanks, which is generally when you feel a little bit safer. But no medevacs, right? No stim for quite a while here. The army supply's not all that exciting on the Marine count. It's still going to be a while before MilkiCow is any type of happy.
Yep, but if he can just make it up to Steam, he'll be somewhat happy, right? Because he does have 2 tanks now, and I think he's just mostly happy that GunGFu didn't go pedal to the metal and go for an all-out YOLO blink on another tank in the natural, because then this game could have just ended like some of the other games ended earlier today. But GunGFu is going to try to do his best Max Packs impression over here with 4 Stalkers and a War Prism in the back of the main, and then still being active with a few Stalkers in the natural, but he is not playing it with the sense of urgency that he really wants to end it. Because we look at the production tab, we see an Immortal, extra gateways, +1 attack and charge, which is completely fine. But honestly, I think MilkiCow is also completely fine with that after losing that first tank and losing that bunker. StarCraft 2 is a game of inches and sometimes 2 seconds between a bunker being done and the ability to repair it, or a bunker not quite being done yet, not finished up and dying, can make the difference between you living and you dying. And at this point, I'd say MilkiCow is absolutely still alive in this game. He is going to have to worry about quicker losses, but with 4 tanks, BO, I mean, you and I have both seen tanks siege up in really good spots, can make losses look like underwhelming units.
And the biggest change that we saw in the pre-Katowice patch, so not the one that we got a month ago, but the one that was back in January of this year, was they nerfed shield battery recharge rate. So when it overcharges, they nerf the amount of energy that regens. And what that meant specifically for PvT was that 3 tanks now could actually out DPS a shield battery when attacking a Colossus. That is one of the reasons why Protoss players got really sad when we talk about that 7 to 10 minute timing, that early to mid game type of builds that we saw Terrans doing over and over again. There was a lot less leeway to keep your Colossus alive. So 3 tanks, technically all you need to work those Colossus down fairly quickly. You add a 4th in, well, that's just a lot. That goes down even quicker.
Yep, I'm gonna pick up 8 Marines, and somehow GunGFu has a lot of map vision, has not spotted this one yet. A bit unlucky in the side of the German Protoss, but that will also come into play. Now at the same time, he's going to focus on these Marines and Marauders on the right side of the map, but just 8 Marines do really pack a punch. GunGFu has a couple Zealots in the main, so that will at least buy some time. Here we go with MilkiCow's push, as we have some Zealots also getting on top of SCVs on the other side of the map. All hell's breaking loose over here. These tanks do feel very exposed though, Bio.
That they do. You talked about 4 tanks being good. Well, 0 tanks are not nearly as good here. MilkiCow doesn't buffer for them. So the Stalkers, the Zealots, they get right on top of it. On the other side, 5 SCVs go down. And the drop from Milky as well. The Zealots totally prevented it. So MilkiCow, no damage on his side of the map, or on his opponent's side of the map, takes damage on his side of the map. He's actually going to have to give this 3rd base position up. Maybe stems on top, gets a couple Zealots as they run forward, auto attack forward. But this game is looking so good for GunGFu right now. Ronnie, at this point in the game, the Terran's supposed to be up about 20 army supply. GunGFuBanDa is up double, and MilkiCow's not even going to give him the satisfaction of a final fight. GunGFuBanDa, he ties it up. Game 3 after all.
Yeah, I mean, all of this started with 65 army supplies, 67 army supply against 77. So you can say that that looks good for GunGfu, but a couple of it is in Zealous on the other side of the map, has a few Zealous chilling in the main. I think that Milky just got a bit ahead of himself. He had 5-6 Marines and a Marauder or two trailing those tanks. I don't know what he expected, but I guess he just expected a couple of Stalkers and maybe one Immortal to be on top of that ramp. But clearly the army that GunGfu was already defending with, was working with, was a whole lot bigger than what MilkiCow expected. And tanks are great, but you need units to protect your tanks. And if the Protoss immediately is on top of them with an Immortal, with a couple Zealous, with a whole bunch of Stalkers, yeah, then tanks can look really crappy against Protoss.
So, Roddy, you're telling me that tanks don't tank?
Every now and then, you know, there are weird moments where if it's like pure Marine tank against a lot of charge slots, that's, I think, the one scenario where tanks do tank, because they tank more than Marines do. But yeah, in a scenario like this, where you need them as the big damage dealer, no, they don't tank. Like, they're just supposed to fire from far away, and if the Protoss ever gets on top of it, at least force them to eat the first few shells to the face. And then the Marines and Marauders are supposed to stand either right next to the tanks or slightly behind, so they can take care of the Zealots, and it's only Stalkers and Colossus that are attacking the tanks. But yeah, this was not a scenario where the tanks did the tanking.
No, and the problem as well, we saw that push happening. There was a tank in a Widow, or a tank in a medevac that MilkiCow was trying to join in the front. And I don't know that one tank there actually makes the difference, because there's just so little bio to join it. But he had a tank in a medevac that he actually moved back towards his own base because he was worried about the Zealot run-bys, and I just get boxed whatever he could find. But that was just even less power in that push. And now we're about getting ready to move into game number 3 here. And Roddy, from what you've seen, we've seen MilkiCow look really impressive in game 1, take a game that, given the way it was going, didn't feel all that easy. And then game 2, we saw MilkiCow get more damage with his initial drop and then lose it afterwards as GunGfu comes back. Who do you favor here moving into game 3?
Really hard to say. I think I favor the exact same way as I did before the series started, where I thought GunGfu is a minor favorite, but I don't think that's enough to say that I'm really leaning towards him, and I think he's going to bring it home. Milky absolutely had a better start in game 2 than he did game 1. The problem is that the follow-up was a whole lot better for GunGfu, where GunGfu was almost overly passive in that first game, where he's like, oh, maybe I'm big GunGfu, I'm the favorite here, you know, I can just play defensive and I'll be fine. He kind of let go of what could have been a really good start. And in game 2, when he took a bit more damage, he's like, all right, now I need to make something happen. He runs to the other side of the map. If he shows up 2 seconds later, BO, it's a completely different game. That bunker is done. You can repair the bunker. I don't think that amount of Stalkers can blink on top of the first tank. But that's just how brutal of a game StarCraft 2 is. That's why we love it. That's why we watch it. But it's obviously sometimes heartbreaking for these guys, because Milky will also know that all it took for him to be ready for those first few Stalkers was a second or 2, and the entire game would have looked very different. But that's in the past. We got to focus on the what is now. Game 3 for the second time today. This time on Heartland. We are looking at the main base of the youngster who's trying to make it into the playoffs of the Europe Regionals at the ESL StarCraft 2 Winter Masters. MilkiCow.
And of course, his opponent in the bottom right in the red, playing a lot better in game 2 and certainly finding that value. His name is GunGFuBanDa.
Just a lot more decisive in game 2, right? Realizing immediately where he's at in the game, realizing that he needs to make something happen. Because the defense in game 1 was cleaner than the defense in game 2. But the follow-up in game 2 was just so much better than the follow-up of game 1. Even though I didn't even hate the macro-oriented approach, but he just gave Milky a little too much time in game 1 with those 2 tanks and the Marines. That obviously kept him occupied, and that opened the doors for the double drop to be as good as it was. Milky is going to switch it up though for us here. We have a Marine opening. So for the first time in the series, we're not going for a Reaper. It's Marine into CC on the high ground with a quick factory of 1 gas.
Yeah, so a little bit greedier coming out of MilkiCow in this game number 2. And you know, Roddy, from a series planning perspective, I think this actually makes a lot of sense. You go aggressive 2 games in a row and you find value, you don't find value, but you train GunGFuBanDa to say, yeah, I got to play defensively. I have to be careful. I have to scout maybe a little bit more. I know that MilkiCow is going to do something aggressive. That's kind of how he likes to play, and that's how he's been playing all tournament. That's what we see him play on ladder as well. And then you do something greedy. You go Marine Expand, you get that quicker command center, but you put it on the high ground, so it's not the easiest thing to scout. And ideally, with all of these stories that you've been telling GunGFuBanDa over the course of this series, by the time he figures out what's happening, he's played a little safer maybe. He's played not quite as greedy as he could, and then you build yourself an advantage from the story you've told in the series.
Yeah. It's not the greediest opening ever, right? Like, you can obviously say that Marine, no bunker, no scout is pretty greedy, and definitely rightfully so, but he's still building the CC on the high ground at least, right? So that's the one thing where we can say, like, Milky could have been a lot more starborn, could have really rolled the dice. This could still turn into another armory opening, by the way, because it's double Hellion, but double Hellion into Widowmines. It could just be a quad Widowmine drop with a later armory, way later. Could still do it early. The funny thing is that GunGfu had the low ground setup, but he didn't actually rally any units to the other side of the map. But that might just be because of what GunGfu scouted, because he's the one who did actually scout, and maybe once he sees the CC on the high ground, he just looks at it and says, like, it's completely pointless for me to rally any units to the other side of the map because I'm not going to get a lot done there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that is the benefit of putting it on the high ground, even if it does slow the Terran down a little bit. But Roddy, you talked about it. It's going to be probably, it's going to be a four Widowmine drop onto the other side. And GunGfu, well, he's going to have to defend it. It's not nearly as scary as adding the armory because, again, once the Widowmines go off, they become visible and you can kill them down. There's Adept is not going to complete that shade. So now we talk about the scenario where 4 Widowmines are going to be in the main base, 2 Hellions thinking about diving in the natural, but MilkiCow actually is going to take damage on that, so has to back up. Widowmine drop actually is going to try to find shots in the natural here. Probes are going to get pulled in time. Does MilkiCow get what he wants? Shot for now. 1 probe goes down for 2 Widowmines. Main base, though. Milky, he's not going to find this either. GunGFuBanDa, he's quick enough on the pull-in. 4 Widowmines. He gets 2 probes.
As one of the Widowmines fires at a probe that was traveling to the assimilator, and it actually survived. So yeah, that's painful for MilkiCow. The setup initially, I think, was kind of cute, to be honest, where he pulled units out of position and the Adept and a Stalker missing. Means a lot of DPS was missing. So I was like, 4 Widowmines can really cause a world of pain here on the side of GunGfu. Yeah, I think he made a mistake with going for the natural first. That's obviously not stuff that he necessarily knows. He's playing the game in the dark. He just sees a bunch of probes. He doesn't see too many units, so he goes for the unload. But looking back at it, if you could do it all over again, yes, you probably boost it into the main base, drop 1 on the top right side of the Nexus, 1 on the bottom left, and then you drop into the natural. Once GunGfu is moving units into the main to defend with this, yeah, that opportunity has passed for Milky, so that means a somewhat rough start here in Game 3. But the good news is that his medevac is still alive. You don't want to lose the Raven, though. Blink is done, so he needs to be very, very, very careful. Blink is going to happen. He's going to blink to the other side. Finally, another turret. Widowmine drop in the natural BO. Okay, 10 probes.
I don't know that justifies losing the Raven, but at least it's something, right? 10 probes is, I guess 12 out of this drop technically. That's still a significant amount, but you don't have the Raven, you don't have that mid-game pushing power, you don't have anti-armor missile, you don't have continuous power over time. So, MilkiCow gets something out of that, Roddy. But again, that Raven going down, it doesn't feel good.
No, I would agree with you that it's actually not worth it, no matter how many great or how great 10 probes looks, if he would have lost the medevac with the Widowmines as well. But since he kept that one alive, I actually do think it was worth it. It's like, okay, we're not going for that Interference Matrix upgrade anyway, because that would obviously also change things, right? Where we're like, but that's painful because he was relying on that Raven. No, he's not investing in that. So the only thing that he really wanted to do was probably be annoying, kill a couple probes. Well, the Raven didn't kill any probes, but because the Raven pulled all the units out of position, the Widowmine did kill probes. And on top of that, the 2 mines and the medevac still alive. I'd say that's a good trade for Milky in the end, even though in a perfect world, obviously, he wouldn't have lost the Raven.
Yeah, certainly. And behind this MilkiCow, he's going to have stim, he's going to have combat shields, he's going to have +1 concussive shells, all these beautiful upgrades. But he's also taken his 3rd base pretty quickly. So, yeah, he got damage done. Yeah, he lost the Raven. But regardless of all of that, he's not really leaning to this really heavy Terran aggression that we often see where you run across the map and it's just really massive amounts of stuff. He is, again, taking that third base so much faster into this game. I mean, that being said, Roddy, it's still 2 tanks, it's still a couple Marauders, it's still a Widowmine, and if GunGFuBanDa doesn't handle this properly, it's gonna not be the easiest thing. And you talked about keeping that medevac alive. If MilkiCow times out things properly, he can find a lot of value. But Stalkers are in position in the main base here. Widowmine's not gonna get shot off on the first one, second one only gets one. But MilkiCow, the force fields prevent him from doing that 2-prong push. He's not gonna find what he wants now.
Whoa.
I mean, that's heavy damage on the Colossus though.
Yeah, I would have loved to maybe see the Marauders go for it immediately, right? You don't get too many opportunities at a high level, and I kind of think with that much damage on the Colossus immediately, no shield battery nearby, I think that was a moment for these 4 Marauders to lead the charge. But Milky decided to save them, wanted to make sure that the scenario of the previous game wouldn't repeat itself. Double drop in the third base. And yes, there is a shield battery there, but that's pretty far away. There's a couple Widowmines in the mix as well. These Widowmines are going to hurt for these Zealots. Feeling the execution so far from MilkiCow, but I gotta give kudos to GunGfu as well, who's doing his best D-Mauer impression, because he has stayed very calm under a lot of pressure and now feels that he's got the army to break out. And I don't think he's wrong. Let's just see if he takes any more damage elsewhere. Nope. So really great defense by GunGfu, just excellent across the board.
Yeah, no, really, that is not an easy situation when you have a bio army, when you have a big army outside of the front, when you have a drop going into your main base, and a drop in the third at the same time. You have to be so fast and so accurate to make sure that your eyes are where they need to be, that you're responding to what the Terran's doing appropriately. Now this bio's going to try to stim in, but I mean, there are 3 Colossus there. That's not going to find all that much. Marauder will fall, and Milky, there is no second punch. This drop on the left side is too small, it's too low. But I guess
main base?
Yeah, nope, there's your second drop after all, so shield battery will fall. This army is going to be able to rotate in time. It's going to be pylons, it's going to be shield batteries. Widowmine actually get some solid shots off, but it's not going to get the heavy economic damage that MilkiCow's looking for.
Milky should try to take out an observer that's keeping track of that army, because that army has allowed GunGfu to get his units in the right position over and over again, or that army revealing it. The Zealot run by is not just decent. I was looking at it, I was like, okay, we're going to get a response any moment now, right? Nope, that ain't happening. So it's 8 SCVs dying, and at the same time, the medevacs are getting picked off in the center of the map. So a game that looked somewhat promising for MilkiCow, where he was finding some success with his multi-prong, now kind of falling apart a little bit. That was way more damage than he was supposed to take against just a couple Zealots, and he has lost all his momentum on the other side of the map.
That he has, and if we look at this, his Viking count is not all that incredible, but Colossus actually very far forward here. Stalkers, I think that, yeah, they got a drop, I think, on the left side, trying to find its way back home. But man, if you could have gotten a Colossus down, it was so exposed. That makes this pressure, this defense from MilkiCow so much easier. Even still, going down the ramp like this into Ghosts, into Vikings as they pop into this defender's advantage, not the easiest thing for GunGFuBanDa. So he's going to sit on the edges for now, start to siege away with this Colossus, looking for MilkiCow to pull the trigger like right now, moving on top. SCVs are going to get pulled here. Can MilkiCow do what he wants? Colossus gets saved. He's going to keep it alive. Second one as well. And now the SCVs, they're falling down. Warp ins for GunGfu are going to do more than enough, and keeping those Colossus alive, Roddy. The biggest of deals. GunGFuBanDa